Greetings. My name is Louise Dente, and I welcome you to yet another edition of Cultural Caravan. On this segment, we're joined by a veteran actor, writer, and illustrator, Mr. Roscoe Orman. Welcome to the Cultural Caravan.
Well, thank you, Louise.
You know, Roscoe, we have been entertained for over 35 years by the character that you have started since 1973 of Gordon, Gordon Robinson on Sesame Street.
That's right.
And just tell us about your experience with Sesame Street.
Oh, well, Sesame Street came along in my life at a very opportune and very important moment. That same year that I was asked to join the cast, which actually was 1974 instead of 73, was the same year that my first child of my four children was born, Rashida, later that year. So I became a parent, and then, or actually the other way around, I became Gordon early that year and then became a parent later on. So I began to really, just within the next few years, began to appreciate the work of Sesame Street, not just as an actor and performer on the show, but as a parent as well. And I think it was very fortuitous for me to have those two roles really conjoined at the same time.
Please tell us about this, for those who do not know who Stepin Fetchit was and his impact on early theater of African Americans.
Yes. Well, the character of Stepin Fetchit was one that was highlighted and seen by a broad range of movie audiences from the late 1920s until the early 1940s, and over the course of that time, which comprised just about all of his film career, he made around 54 films. Mostly in supporting, comic roles, playing the servant characters, and created this iconic figure of the slow-talking, kind of dim-witted, kind of sly. If you really, a lot of the black audiences could see that this guy was, he was really kind of pulling something over on the master or the boss, But he had this, you really couldn't take your eyes off of him because he was such a magnetic personality.
But, when you look at the different nuances where you take us from Stepin Fetchit's his background and everything else, tell us what type of, what did you have to do to just really get into or possess this
Well, the first
role?
thing I had to do was I had to study his work. And really get a sense of his artistry, because he was an artist. He created, just as I've studied and performed and acted for over 40 years, and I understand that the craft of acting, is something that really requires a great deal of expertise and knowledge and discipline and so forth. And he had it. He was a natural. He was a natural artist. And then when I also began to understand, through match play primarily, what he was really like as a man, what his background was, and how, he had such a dynamic presence and a conscious, plan and forethought in terms of what he wanted to accomplish, and he went after it, it was so aggressively. That really caught my admiration and attention. I really admired, especially in the times that he came up. We're talking about the 20s and 30s, when it was quite common for black males to be lynched all over the South. There was complete Jim Crow and segregation throughout the southern states, and through many other parts of the country that it was de facto, but it was very, very different from the times we live in now. So to have a man like him in an industry that was completely racist and segregated, to achieve any level of success that was consistent and long term was pretty astounding when you think about it.
Wow.
Even today, there are only a handful of black actors who have that kind of success.
And so that's interesting because you do see a couple of us who have risen to that level, but there's not really the type of man, I mean, you know, in terms of just someone looking at what it was back then when, you know, you had Stepin Fetchit, who wasn't necessarily the most positive image, but you're talking about survival.
Yes.
And now you see today. As an actor and your reflections, and I know that you have also written a book where you actually share your experiences as a veteran actor, the book entitled Sesame Street Dad, The Evolution of an Actor.
Yes.
Tell us about what are some of the lessons that you've learned in this business and what you like to share in terms of this?
Well, my inspiration to write the book was first from my children, my 4 children. I wanted them to have a sense of who I was as a man and as an artist beyond Gordon of Sesame Street. Of course, most people know me, most people who know my work know me as Gordon. And I'm very proud and very happy to have had that opportunity to present such a positive image, particularly for children, you know, because it is such, it has such impact on their lives, as I said before. But I also wanted to share some of my early experiences, you know, earlier, and also experiences that I've had along with portraying Gordon over the years. Even since I've been on Sesame Street, I've continued to be involved in theater, film, and other television roles as well. So I wanted to just give a full picture, of, you know, the full dimension of who I am, particularly for my children. As I began to write the story of my experiences, particularly in the 60s and 70s, very important and dynamic era in our history generally, with the Civil Rights era and the Black Arts Movement, which I was very much a part of. First, with the Free Southern Theater in the South, we were based in New Orleans, and were, in fact, like a cultural arm of the Civil Rights Movement. We toured all the little southern towns in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama, doing plays that talked about the issues of the Civil Rights Movement, and at great risk to our own personal, you know, well-being and lives. We've had some very, you know, most of us were arrested a few times. You know, we went through that struggle, and as everyone knows, you know, to great effect, the Civil Rights movement changed this country.